Welcome Dreamforce, welcome Architect community, welcome Trailblazers. Today we want to talk about how you bring actually kind of well architected as a kind of a framework into the real life. This is the important slide, obviously. Forward-looking statement. Don't make any kind of purchasing decisions for products which are not commercially available. And with that, my name is Christopher. I'm working as the Salesforce CTO for Germany at Capgemini. I'm a Salesforce CTA. And the initial idea of this session actually was like a couple of months ago, where I was part of I got an ask from the community, the architect community, hey, present please the key trends for 2024. And I did it in a group and a bunch of people, similar audience like here, and I asked, hey, okay, who knows what architected? Because for me it was like one of those key trends. And just like a few folks raised their hands, and then I realized, okay, it just needs way more times of education. So well architected, what is it about? It's about EAT, easy, adaptable, and trusted solution. And it's a framework provided to build better Salesforce solutions with like multiple different layers, with patterns, kind of decision guides, ways how you can ensure that from a holistic point of view, you create a better Salesforce solution. And as Jordan Seeley put out this graphic and put it into that kind of type of diagram, yeah, you can translate it almost like as the perfect circle of life. And we all know, as part of the circle of life, there is this shadowy place over there, which is called like the technical debt, right? And yeah, we want to prevent those kind of technical debt, and that's part of the session here. So I want to walk you through kind of 5 cases how we prevent technical debt in our projects and how you can actually, or how well architected help us to apply. So first, let's start with trust as one of the layers and building a secure solution. So the first real life use case started in that way that one of our customers approached us. He was operating a community still on an old Aurora framework. I see some, frankly speaking, older faces, so you're probably aware of what Aurora is. They want to migrate to an LWC or LWR/LWC framework. And obviously, to quote Pink badly, it's all about trust, right? So how you actually achieve that within a community, because it's like customer facing, very sensitive data, and how you actually ensure that. Don't bother you too much with the code. I asked our team, hey guys, how we want to ensure actually that our solution is actually secure. And what most of developers and potentially some solution architects aren't really aware of is like, if you're building LWCs, you don't need to rely basically on Apex. So obviously, if you're introducing Apex, besides you have much more code, you also need to ensure that you enable it for Aurora. You need to ensure that you have like all your Apex classes secure. And on the other side, without Apex, with the aid of the wire service, you actually can rely on the Lightning data service, which is a kind of a great technology because it brings out of the box the capability to ensure that everything is secured, feed level security access is actually considered. And that's really a part of the well-architected framework. Taking that in mind, we went to our customer and said, okay, whenever we're building now an LWC, especially for customer facing, let's try to do without Apex as good as possible as a kind of a guardrail, as guiding principle to ensure that our solution is trusted and secure. And that helped us to relieve and focus more, obviously, on delivering kind of a pixel-perfect look and feel. The second one, adaptable. How you build actually a resilient solution. Again, it wasn't this year, actually. It happened this year, where a potential customer approached us and said, gave me a phone call, hey, Christopher, we have some kind of minor issues and hiccups. We would like to get an outside-in view how we actually can deploying things. And I said, yes, okay, we can do that. And he said, yeah, we're still deploying with change sets, but that's totally fine. And it was like the first moment I got, okay, this sounds not fine, but continue. So he elaborated a little bit further that they have actually two teams. One is particularly taking care of like a Service Cloud implementation, and there was a community involved that was then part of the second team. And the second team then obviously had a lot of interference with like the Service Cloud team. And there was a lot of governance hiccups and so forth, back and forth. Anyhow, it turned out that they had really huge issues with the deployment and their governance or their development setup. So I went into the well-architected framework, and well-architected states out pretty clear, stop using org-based development. It's an older technology, and migrate away. And that's pretty clear, migrate away. That's a very bold statement you should consider as part of your overall DevOps concept. So how you're doing that? And that's why that are one of those aspects where I really like the well-architected framework, because it's like every kind of customer is different from Salesforce. There are smaller companies, bigger companies, very complex setups. But the well-architected frameworks try to provide kind of a guidance for almost all those kind of use cases. Starting very small with some kind of automation in terms of like, hey, using some kind of tools to perform repetitive tasks. So in those kind of cases, for example, like the testing, how you're actually doing kind of deployments based on certain tooling. But it also gives a clear indication how you can start then with like continuous integration. So kind of the very important word is here frequently, pushing your code into a shared repository. And obviously as a kind of potential end state then, you end up in continuous delivery, where you find like a setup to ensure that all kind of deployment is passed automated tests and directly move into production. But that all comes, and that's a very important part, obviously with cultural change. So what we did within the customer and based on the feedback and the initial starting point, I advised, okay, guys, let's start small. Using the Salesforce DevOps Center as some kind of tooling automation, try to frequently push certain code or your code into a shared repository with the aid of the DevOps Center and really start small. And then from there on, we can plan with like the cultural change to enable the team that they can really start. And that all was like part and the initial idea provided by well-architected. One of my favorite cases is like kind of building an easy and automated solution. So last year I was involved in a project. Again, the community was involved. Customer facing, very sensitive financial data, which was displayed to the end users. And there was a backend system actually based on Azure, which doing certain stuff in terms of like collecting certain documents, screening them, filtering out all the kind of financial KPIs and figures, and then pushing them to Salesforce. And Salesforce on the other side is doing a certain aggregation. So it turned out that some customers were really smart and re-evaluate and do the calculation and backup check if the financial figures are right. And it turned out for certain customers, they were actually not accurate. So I talked to the integration architect, and the first thing I heard is like, our integration is stable, it's working. We have certain patterns in mind, integration is working. So obviously we are talking about here is data integrity within the automation. So we have like two systems, they are talking to each other, and obviously we want to ensure that the data we are receiving and displaying is in the right state. And what a well-architect that helps you is, as a kind of an architect, is really like, don't forget anything. It gives you something at hand to really go through, like a kind of a guideline. Hey, that are the things we need to consider. So in this case, we are talking about, for example, obviously order of execution, which needs to be considered. We are talking about things, are we handling large data? Have we complex data calculations? Is there anything potentially, especially in the Salesforce side, which gets executed in the system context or within the user context? And last but not least, does everything needs to happen in real time, or can we push certain things into like an asynchronous pattern? So I went over the implementation, and well-architected, not only helping in terms of like giving and providing an overview, they also have like a fancy, comprehensive overview in terms of like, hey, guys, that are the anti-patterns, and that are the patterns to follow. So if we are talking about anti-patterns, I went over the implementation, and I saw, okay, a field mapping between the Azure and the Salesforce system wasn't really in place. Check. Asynchronous Apex, or in general, asynchronous processes aren't really in use. Check. Even if it wasn't necessary, by the way. Also, future methods weren't really used. And last but not least, and that's obviously one of my favorite things, is like having like a huge monolith flow with like 500 nodes. Nobody can read it, nobody can understand it. Lovely. So what we did is we went over the implementation and tried to adapt and implement as much as possible patterns. We provided the respective field mapping. We considered which kind of calculations can be handled asynchronously, just to ensure that the data integrity is right, that we have like the right processes, and obviously we ensured like with certain orchestration that the order of execution is respected, so data integrity is secured, and the financial calculations are accurate. And well-architected helped us here to really get to that state, just to have everything in mind. This one made actually the cut just like last week. So I took over a new project, as always, and it's about building up an easy and engaging solution. And it is a Salesforce implementation from a customer who has this the Salesforce instance since ages, actually. So Salesforce is, I guess, when they started, was like still operating on Steam. And yeah, what they have is like they have literally 800 fields on the opportunity object. They have 70 custom profiles. All are roughly sometimes in use, totally overlapping. It's a mess. And the first thought I had was like, hey guys, this poor admin, who needs to maintain that? Give that guy a hug or at least bring him a coffee. And we talked about now in the first 3 stories, most likely about, or mostly how kind of really technical aspects help in terms of like well-architected. But there's much more to consider. So Tom Leddy, who's actually the product director of well-architected, made this super cool statement, which is, I just can emphasize to respect that. Every implementation is unique, but it gets the tendency to get messy. So what well-architected is also helping you is this, it provides also like guides in terms of like how you're ensuring usability and how you can enhance the user experience. So it helps you to consider, as an architect, to avoid those kind of 3 common pitfalls. First, you're building those kind of cluttered solutions that you're showcasing unnecessary stuff, keeping those 800 fields in mind. I assume 700 are most likely empty. Most likely they're on the page layout. And as a sales rep, agent, I have to scroll up and back and forth. It's a mess. We're talking about unicorn solutions, which, as an architect, you keep in mind that you've implemented them, and obviously your users also need to know that they are there. I always reference that we're building solutions sometimes for the 29th of February when it falls together with a new moon, which is totally unrealistic, but we have those solutions in place. And we are pretty sure, hey, okay, we are using them, and most likely just we forget about it, that they are there. And last but not least, Groundhog Day. We're enforcing our end users to add stuff over and over and over again. And with well-architected, you get certain patterns at hand, helping points to really ensure that you identify those kind of cases in terms of the user experience and some kind of guidance how you can overcome them. So what we will do with our customers, like really going over the implementation, keeping those points in mind, and really try to stroke out and get rid of as much as possible, most likely outdated implementation and business processes which are there from the past. And the last one, and obviously as we're here at Dreamforce 24, we need to talk about AI. So we all say the line, and when you're coming back from Dreamforce, I guess you will be asked as an architect, either from the business side or if you related to the business department, hey guys, please explain me what is actually Agentforce, for example. And I want to have Agentforce right now. Yeah, so you have tomorrow, and then the week after, where you need to implement it. But jokes aside, what I observe within the market and for most companies is like that it's really lacking then a kind of a roadmap. Roadmap in terms of like on both sides, on business as well as then on the IT. So in terms of like providing business capabilities, providing feature roadmaps, which will help you to get a transparent overview where to put the AI features. Because just because AI is in place, because Agentforce is in place, it doesn't mean that you just from tomorrow there's no work anymore there. You already potentially are already at the limit of your capacity. So with Agentforce, for example, or any kind of new AI technology and feature that comes on top, you potentially need to think about your prioritization. And what I see very, very often is either that nothing is in place in terms of like capability maps from a business perspective, as well as from the IT part in terms of like providing some kind of component roadmap, for example. Or it's just shown in an initial kickoff. Hey, okay, this is like our roadmap. And then in a 2-year, 3 years project, you will never see the roadmap again. And that's one of those common pitfalls you fall into. And I just can encourage you as an architect, ensure that you have like a very transparent communication around through its business, as well as to your IT colleagues, to ensure what is actually part of your roadmap. Understand the why. Why are certain features on the roadmap? Why are you enforcing certain business capabilities? As well as why you put certain components and tooling decisions from an IT perspective on those kind of technology roadmaps, for example. And last but not least, which is also very important, tailored communication. Taking Agentforce as one of those examples. Ensure that you can explain it, but also in a certain way that everybody understands what you're talking about. And this is like what I encounter so often, that we are just talking into totally two different directions. With that, I just can encourage you, and that's maybe the biggest takeaway and lessons learned, hopefully, in that kind of 20-minute session, is that well-architected provides a framework and gives you something at hand to ensure accountability, to ensure that you really have something which helps you to keep everything in balance, and where you can, as an architect, be accountable for what is built. And that's very, very important part from the well-architected framework. So you ask yourself how you can start. You can scan the QR code. It's basically referencing on the architects.salesforce.com. And there's a second thing I would like to emphasize to you. Salesforce is releasing, and the architect team, more and more decision guides. So just last week, they dropped the decision guide for asynchronous processing. So keeping the third use case in mind with the community and the Azure system, that would be very helpful as a kind of like a guiding paper in terms of like, hey, okay, that are things you need to consider. They're going a little bit deeper compared to the framework itself. There will be an Einstein summary available. Not only soon, it's already available, because this is a rerun of a session. And last but not least, please share your feedback. It's highly appreciated, and yeah, you get a coffee. And with that, thank you for joining and attending, and hopefully I could demystify a little bit the well-architected framework, and I just can encourage you that you're utilizing it from now on your daily basis. Thank you.